Morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing good. So, welcome back, guys. Yet another session of cost and management accounting. We will be focusing on the other part of the cost of the product. On Tuesday, we had covered the first element when we talked about the costing of any product overall covers the material, labor, and overhead. And we discussed about material aspects. We discussed about the inventory levels, discussed about the inventory controls, and today we move on to talk about the labor part. I hope each one of you are doing great in terms of your routine of practice, study, and remember the three golden words I told you that the shortcut to success. Actually, there is no shortcut to success, but the three important steps towards success are practice, practice, and practice. Right. So great. I can see a lot of people on the query panel. Also, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Tamanna, Manappa, and people here as well. Great. So when we talk about the labor part, guys, we need to understand some important aspects. We will be talking about overall understanding of the labor cost involved, the payroll cycle which various companies follow. But we'll also understand from an examination perspective what kind of questions come in and what are the key integrities we need to understand, kind of mistakes you guys or the students generally can make. So we will try that. You guys will avoid that. So overall, we will be covering in terms of what are the different components of the employee cost, how the integration of various departments is very, very important in terms of building up the entire payroll cost, right? So labor is a very, very important element. In spite of the fact we are talking about a lot of automation we have seen over the decades, we are living in the world of AI kind of having its spread and footprint almost every year, everywhere. But still, there are certain fields, certain areas, labor is irreplaceable, right? So we could argue that have we seen a paradigm shift in the industry from the capital intensive or from the labor intensive to the capital intensive or the manual to the automated? Having said that, it's very imperative that we understand that there will be a significance. We talk about certain jobs or certain roles kind of getting automated, you know, bringing in by robotics and everything else. But mind you, even the people who are bringing that change are the workers themselves, right? So a very very important a session in terms of understanding, because once we reach overall costing, the overall cost of the product, once we talk about the absorption costing, we will have to get a good end-to-end idea of material, labor, and overhead. So what does the labor cost generally involve? Of course, as we discussed about material as well, we are looking at, we're talking about the direct material and indirect material. Similarly, here as well, we are talking about a labor cost in terms of various elements. First of all, whatever the salary components could be, we are looking at wages, salary, the bonus, incentive, etc., paid to them. Now the point here is, how do we determine the wages? How do we determine these salary levels? Of course, if you talk about person who are working into factories versus corporates, a lot of things come into a lot of the factors comes into consideration. Let's say about in initial years of, or for freshers or initial years of career of a worker, you may be considering a lot of factors with respect to the skill set, qualification. But as the workers move along, as the experience is obtained, we more look towards the qualitative factors in terms of the experience and the skills on the job. So these are the factors which will determine, we kind of various times we say that, in industry, when people shift jobs from one to another, we are looking at from a perspective of a last drawn salary. Okay, so that's generally what happens as one of the important factors when you shift jobs. But remember, that person would have started with perspective of some qualification, and they would have started at some level. Okay, Sweetie mentioning voice is not clear. Guys, anyone can confirm if voice is okay? Sweetie, maybe you can also check your uh, speakers or volume control. Okay. So we're talking about in terms of the employee salary part. How do we determine whether or what amount should be paid to one worker and the other? I have a quick question, guys. Why is it important to consider that? Let me hear from you guys. Why it is important that we are, or we should rather, give a due consideration to the quantum, to the level of salary a person should get? Why it is important? Why it is important? You guys can reply me on the query panel and people here as well. Hmm. Very basic question I'm asking right now. Okay, thanks, Unikrishnan. Unikrishnan had confirmed about the voice part. Okay, guys. So why it is important to assess, review, why the, or is the labor cost is, or the amount of salary we are giving to a particular person or at different levels is good enough or not. 3D says part of the product cost. Okay. Okay. So we are thinking from two perspectives right now. We are thinking from an organization perspective, who is paying the cost, who's paying the salary, but we are also should be thinking rather empathize from a worker perspective. There was an opportunity cost, as in, you're talking about a person's satisfaction level is also directly linked amongst other factors like the work environment. You are also looking at the salary levels. Many times we see that, okay, a person may be starting his or her career at a salary much lesser than expected by them, because they want to get into the corporate journey. But as they grow on with the experience, at some point in their career, maybe in the initial stages, or maybe after a few years, they kind of achieve that correction, which was anyways expected or rather deserved by them. So there are a lot of factors. I think I agree with you guys when you're saying it's part of the cost. Of course, from the salary, from the company perspective, they would want the cost to be minimum, right? The same time, they cannot just focus on the minimum cost at the cost of quality. That's what we also discuss in material, right? So it's very, very important that from a costing perspective, we are looking at monitoring the entire process here, and we are looking at the same time ensuring that they are compensated appropriately, because if on the one hand you are talking about economy in cost, but we are also looking at efficiency, performance. So these are the three E's we discussed the other day. This is important in all the aspects of the cost, guys. We're talking about economy, we are talking about efficiency, and we are talking about the effectiveness. So economy will always be from a savings and cost perspective. Efficiency is more with respect to how you utilize your resources. We're talking about effectiveness is what. So efficiency is basically how you do it. The word how is always associated with efficiency, and in terms of the effectiveness, we are looking at what is my objective. Now, as we did for the material part, even for the labor, we are looking at two aspects: direct labor cost and indirect labor cost. So people who are directly working associated with the production process, or working on a contract, or working for a customer, they are the ones who are paid wages, and we term that portion as a direct labor cost. Now, what could be a good example of indirect labor? I'm saying that, okay, these are the costs which may not be directly affiliated with the production process, may not be directly associated with the particular contract. Can anyone give me an example of indirect labor cost, please? Indirect labor cost. Tamanna, Komal, anyone else? What could be a good example for indirect labor cost? Waiting for some responses. Asking you guys example of a indirect labor cost. Very nice answer. Sweetie says supervisor salary would be the one, because supervisor is the guy who will be supervising the entire production flow instead of working on one particular production process. Could be the foreman, the lift foreman, could be the, we're talking about in terms of the uh, someone who is working in the back office. So we are looking at indirect labor costs generally, which enters into the overall calculation of the overheads part as well. So as much as direct cost is important from a control perspective, even the indirect labor cost is important. Although it cannot be directly attributable, it is included in overheads, but it is important to have a control on both the parts. Other answers, only question saying employee working in administrative section, administrative salary is absolutely correct. Compensation, Tamanna says compensation paid to employee for any loss. Tamanna, will talk about that part separately. If you're talking about loss on what account, are we talking about some idle time? Are we talking about, some kind of ad hoc incidents? So we will discuss that, whether that most probably you will be correct in terms of whether it is not part of the process, then it will be an indirect cost. So it says salary of employees working in administration. We discuss that. And Tamanna says even in the finance department as well. Perfect answers, guys. Now, as far as we understand that, yes, from an organization perspective, from a costing perspective, we want to keep the cost low. But how do we achieve that, right? How do we achieve that? How do we achieve this overall objective that, okay, we want to keep the cost low, but at the same time, we are saying that we want to avoid people leaving the organization also, right? So it's a very interesting cat and mouse, game at one point, and we will kind of connect those dots. But what I'm trying to cover here right now, guys, is for overall understanding is that the entire payroll, the entire labor cost handling uh, involves various departments, and it generally requires a integrated or a coordinated efforts from all the departments to come up with a best possible cost from the organization perspective. So let's understand what are the departments which are involved here. We are first of all talking about the personnel or a human resource department. And don't worry, we'll talk about the roles and responsibilities for each of these. Engineering and work study department. We in the present day world, we also call many companies have a team called quality control team with respect to this handling. Then we are looking at the timekeeping. We are looking at timekeeping or admin department here. So we are calling it as a timekeeping, but as I said, many companies are having the responsibility rolled out to admin team. Then we are looking at a payroll team who's actually processing the payroll, cost accounting, taking care of the accounting part, and tax and treasury is also very important, who takes care of the tax compliances, whether there are any kind of tax deductions or any statutory dues that needs to be paid on behalf, or they have to deduct it from the employee salary and then deposit it. Now, with respect to each of these departments, guys, understand the entire cycle. Understand the entire cycle, what happens from a functioning of these departments, right? So we will be understanding, okay, what is the role each of these departments have to play, and we will have this overall understanding. We'll understand the components, and then maybe we'll look at some examples and questions for our practice purposes. So, with respect to the overall functions, we talk about one by one. I see that, okay, personal department. You think from a stage from the person is hired, from the stage the person is hired to the stage the person is trained, then the person is monitored in terms of his or her performance, and then is adequately compensated for. So this is the entire cycle in terms of, even if we go move beyond that stage, and we'll cover that point. What if the person is overall not getting what he or she is aspiring from the job? Is he or she moving towards the end part of the journey with that particular employer? Can that result in the employee to leave the organization also? We will talk about that later. Right now, I'm discussing the functions of different departments. So we're talking about a personnel department. We also call them as a HR department, human resource. What do they do? What do they do? What is the role of HR department? In a nutshell, Many people will answer that the role of HR department is recruitment, right? That's what, but there is a process behind every function, every role and objective, right? There is a process they follow. So initially what happens is there could be a request coming in from various departments that, okay, we need uh, these many resources for this much level or middle level or a startup or an experience level position. And they also tell the departments who have the requirement of that resource, they will tell the HR about what are the skill sets they're looking for. Now, I've personally, worked in industry and I've seen that major change that has happened, and I can give some experiences from that. Is I remember the days almost a couple of decades ago where the companies used to do hiring, and a lot of companies used to have a very generic job descriptions. There's something called job description. Okay, let me ask this first. How many of you know what a job description is? What a job description is? We also call it as a JD. What is a job description? Let's see who answers this. Hmm. Anyone here or on the query panel? What do you think a job description is? Scope of job to be done. Unification, super. What about others? So, can I say, is it a document which is prepared by the HR personnel department based on the request made by various departments, and that document is shared with the candidates, either directly or through consultants, so that they are aware, okay, what is expected out of them, right? So, Sweetie says what skill sets required, what qualities the company is looking. So, a lot of things, right? Experience needed, qualifications needed. The document which is prepared by the personnel department on the request by the various or on the basis of the request made by various other departments. Now, I remember in the early stages of decades of 2010 to 20, a lot of corporates started to do something called technical skill mapping. What used to happen was earlier, most of the job descriptions were very generic. That ultimately a person working in a company realized over the few months that, okay, what I'm doing, I read something in the job description, but am I actually doing the task? Or what proportion of my day-to-day activities relate to what I was initially told? Kind of a scenario which led to job dissatisfaction, people leaving the organization. A lot of factors were there which contributed to a significantly higher rate of attrition than expected in many companies. I'm talking about almost 15, 20 years ago. Now, so whose loss is that when the company loses employees? Obviously, it is loss of both, right? You're talking about the person have to rotate the jobs. You're talking about the company spending time and efforts and cost, training, productivity loss, and we'll discuss those as well. The point here is what they thought, or the HR function evolved with that. That okay, we need to be realistic while hiring. We have to take the very correct step at the very initial stage. So they did something called technical skill mapping, and I remember in one of my corporates, I was myself involved in that exercise as a team leader. They involved me in that project as well for listening with various departmental managers, understand what are the general requirements they have, let's say at an executive level, at a senior level, or a assistant manager level, or a manager level, how many experience they need. So we build up a matrix. We actually built up a matrix which helped us to fine tune our job description, to make those job descriptions as close to the actual job that will be done by them. So that paradigm shift has happened in the industry almost a decade ago for various corporates, guys. So the role of HR department here is not only we are looking at from a recruitment perspective, but we are also looking at things revolving around. Specifically, we are looking at ensuring proper training. The concept like when a person joins an organization, you're looking at a concept of buddy in many companies. They have a buddy system. Like, person is new to the system and you want to make that employee comfortable, and they align in someone else who is already in the system to help that guy around. Now, apart from this, they are the one who will keep all the master files or the records in terms of, you can say, the the employee's salary, or the cost to the company, or whatever the master records in terms of their address, initial salary offered, right? And not only that, their role is also involved around the evaluation of performance from time to time, because every year we're talking about annual appraisals. Now, hey, this also has gone through a lot of changes over the years, guys. The evaluation part, although most of the companies have still got annual appraisals, that you get your salaries revisited, your performance get evaluated every year. However, there's something called a process before we reach that stage, called a performance discussions. We're talking about the performance discussions with the supervisors. They used to be annual at some point of time, but many companies have made those discussions either half yearly or quarterly. Why? Because what used to happen, guys, if at the end of the year you are telling the employee, okay, these are the areas where you are lagging, and this will be your annual rating, and this will be your next year's salary. Empathize from an employee perspective, empathize from a labor perspective. They can tell you that, okay, the year has already gone. You should have told us this is somewhere, during that particular year, so that we could have improved upon. And that's why many companies have implemented this change, that there are discussions, performance discussions, which happen either half yearly or even quarterly. This is something you guys will see when you guys have those corporate experiences. This is in that particular direction, that, okay, they would want to intimate, they want to ensure that the people in different team are working as expected, or they're lagging behind in certain areas. That is a HR department for you. So they are talking about keeping the master records, initial recruitment, training, performance appraisals. A lot of things are handled by them. Then we are talking about another department called Engineering and Works Study Department. I also talk about a kind of a word which is given by many companies as a quality control team, QCD. Now you can see the first point, the process I said, technical skill mapping. So this is actually the engineering and works department who led that project in many companies, and they involved people from different departments, and of course HR as well. So the two main departments who got involved were these two. So they prepare the plan and specifications for each job. As I said, the job descriptions, they got really fine tuned here. They regularly supervise a lot of works which are performed. They conduct a time motion study. So let me connect something here from what we studied in material, guys. In material, we discussed something called bill of material. Yes, you guys remember, right? Ideally, how much material should be used in a product. Similarly, even for a particular a concept, in terms of a process, we need to know how many hours are required, right? How many labor hours are required? How many people are required in a particular team? So that is something which is ultimately arrived by a process called a time and motion study. Now, what does this mean is, I remember, like, there was a QC team in our organization. They used to liaison with a particular department, or a manager, that, okay, they would like to obviously avoid the times where there are absolutely peaks or absolutely low time, as in, like, you don't have a lot of work on some days, but you have so much work on other days. You would like to pick up a reasonable, I would say, workload days, and you would align with the manager that, okay, you would want to sit with few people and see what are they doing and how much time they are taking up in running some reports. Now, very interesting thought, where the team manager or the workers would be, in their mind, would be thinking that they need not be extra efficient on that day, right? You can't be abnormally doing something when there is a work time and motion study going on. You should be doing something normally, how much time normally takes, so that this gives an idea to the QC team, to the engineering team, that, okay, hey, this much time is involved in this report. These many reports are kind of worked upon, or this much production time is required at this process, assembly, or cutting, or whatever the companies, whether it's manufacturing or they're talking about the service industry. right? So this is important across the industry. Now, why this is important, as I said, you need to ultimately decide how many people do we need, right? We discussed about planning. We discussed about the how many, like, raw material requirement was there when we were discussing the material part. Similarly, here we need to know that, okay, how many workers do we need? There is a concept, there is a term we also use in industry called FTEs. Anyone would like to guess what this FTE could mean? Just a vague guess, in case I'm sure many of you would be hearing this for the very first time. That's okay. Anyone would like to guess what could be FTE? I think I can give a hint here. E stands for employees. What is FTE? Let's see, anyone wants to respond on that? No idea. No worries. I will give you an idea. So FT stands for full-time employees. So the team, so what they do is, the engineering works with the team, so they get an idea about, okay, how many people are required in different teams. So let's say a particular team is involved in 30 processes in a particular month. So they will ideally see, okay, how many hours are needed for each process. They will add that up. They will see how many hours are there, working hours are there in a month. Right? Let's say we are talking about 8 hours a day. Yes, Tamanna, full-time employees. Very good. Very good. So 8 hours a day, that means 40 hours a week. And let's say we're talking about, let's say, just for an example, we're saying that in a particular week, there are 176 hours. So what they will do is, what is the total number of hours are required in all the processes in a team? Let's say we are looking at, okay, 1760 hours are required for a particular team, and we have 176 hours in terms of uh, overall number of workings are in a month. Let's say 22 days into 8. So that means we are looking at 10 FTEs. It could be, let's say, interestingly, this is a very, very simple number. I'm kind of giving an example that with 10 people are required in the team. But in a nutshell, in real estate, they also sometimes arrive at, okay, we need 8.5 people in a team. So what if I getting, I need 8.5 people in my team. So how can I get that point 0.5? Of course, that means you can have 9 people working in a particular team, but that means one person can also be utilized in some other task, right? So coming back to the role of the works study team, guys, apart from the time motion study, which helps them to build upon the requirements of the how many employees are needed, they also do a regular supervision and check the production activities. uh, they also do activities like, I can give an example. Since it's the era of efficiency, it's the era of automation for ages now, robotics coming into picture, artificial intelligence coming into the picture. They have also helped significantly organizations to arrive and to achieve efficiencies. Many organizations have annual targets of 10% efficiency, for example. Now, how do I bring in 10% efficiency? If I have a 10% working in my team, think logically. I have two options as a process manager. As a manager of a team, I will have two choices. Either I do the same amount of work next year with 9 people, or I get more work, more activities on my plate for my team. That's efficiency targets. And that has actually keep the ball rolling for years now. Have kind of in the world in terms of the efficiencies, the levels, the requirement of automation, and all that is because of those efficiency targets. Right? So there's a very, very important role this the engineering and work study team have to do. Next one is timekeeping department. Now, the timekeeping department, many companies, many corporates also assign this role to someone called admin department. When I said timekeeping department, what is the role here? We are looking at attendance records, how much time each person is working in different on different days or in different roles in different jobs. So remember we discussed the material stores. We had a bin card system. We had a inventory ledgers and all that. Similarly, here you would have a scenario where that, okay, you can have two perspectives of looking at it. How many, like, if you talk about industrial, processes, or how does the corporate work? Let's say every Friday, most of the companies require, most of the MNCs, multinational companies, require their people to fill in something called timesheets. Now, this is not the role of timekeeping department. I'm giving you a different example where the the employees themselves are working on the timesheets. Where did they work or for those 40 hours? How much work was, what did they do on a Monday or a Tuesday? So that accordingly, the cost allocation will be done. However, at the same time, we are looking from an admin department from an overall attendance perspective, leaves perspective, how many days a person has worked, so that accurate payroll can be processed. What part of that cost will go to different departments? For that, an interesting input will come from the people who are actually working. If they submit a timesheet, okay, these are the 40 hours, these are the five projects I'm working on. I devoted 15 hours on project one, 6 hours on project two, 8 hours on project three, so that my manager can see and review and approve that. And accordingly, the cost can be allocated to the different projects, and we get the proper management accounting part. Now, even this has gone significant change when we talk about timekeeping department. There were days, I can give another example. In one of the organizations where I went for interview, probably talking about in 2013, I was working in company A, where when we used to enter into this company, we used to have this ID cards. We call it as a punch card. We'll see that. And you enter, swipe your ID card and you enter into a company. And when you come out, you will swipe your card and the gates will open and you will come out. Now, I was working in the organization which had that ID card system, and I was going to another company for an interview process, and I saw people were entering. It was a morning time around 9:30. Everyone who was entering the floor was entering their names and time in attendance register on a manual basis. I said, "Wow, am I looking at a process degrade? That okay, I'm already working in an environment where there is ID cards, there are punching cards, and I'm thinking from working from that organization to an organization where there are a lot of manual things still happening." And we'll talk about that part also, what are the plus and minuses of those systems. And interestingly, I happened to join that organization. And when I actually joined that, which happened almost 45 days later, they had already implemented the card system. So I remember the first day I was given the card to punch in. And I was like, okay, that means, it's like every organization at different stages to upgrade themselves. And those were the days. Now we are looking at things like biometric as well. We're talking about people having the retina scans and their fingerprint scan. Only then they could enter, right? And even a lot of changes have happened in the company's policies, guys. Companies' policies have gone a lot of change. For example, at some point we had a time tracking that the overall time spent by a person in the company would be judged by the first login of the day and the last logout. If I talk about the attendance part, but then they realized that okay, people have different jobs. Some people have to go to clients, so they had to keep some processes defined for that. What if a person is not in the office for most part of the day, but they're at a client place? Process manager should know. His team leader should know. So for that, the policies were made. If there were any late no, not check-ins, but yeah, there were late entries into the system, how many number of days you are allowed late, will there be any salary reductions? A lot of factors depend on what are the inputs given by the admin department. Having said that, when I say that this is mostly the responsibility of a timekeeping or admin department, many corporates have automated this also because there are softwares which capture this. They have to just run down a report and they have to share with the next department called payroll department. So they share that with the payroll department. Why? Because the payroll department is the one who will have to calculate, who have to prepare the entire salary for a particular month. They're not the one who are paying though. They're just preparing the payroll register. Now, I need an answer from everyone here, guys. This is a question for everyone. When I say the payroll department is responsible for preparation of payroll, who will be ultimately requesting the treasury team to disperse that to set, kind of credit the salary. But my question is, what all departments would give inputs to the payroll department? Any thoughts for preparation of the payroll? Hmm. Remember my word when I said it's integration, coordinated efforts of various departments that helps us to not only keep the employee cost in control, but also processing of the payroll. So what are departments will feed in the inputs here? Hmm. Let's see. For a payroll department to process a payroll for a particular month, what are inputs they would be needing? Anyone? Okay, time spent on the job, Sweetie says. So, Sweetie, are we saying that they will be getting the input from the timekeeping department? How does the payroll department know what salary has to be paid to a particular employee? So you will have the master records or the master file coming from the HR department also. So what I'm trying to say is that, okay, so Sweetie says salary rate, attendance, very nice. So that means we are talking about what is the salary rate coming from the HR department. They would be the one who would be having those records. So you will have, because let's say in the month of April you have your appraised salary. Payroll department would not know that how much salary has been increased. So they will have to get those numbers from the HR. From the attendance perspective, they will get the attendance report from the admin team. So they may also get input from the finance team. Sorry, I'm just having a little bad throat. So we are looking at even the input coming from a finance team could be because let's say there are some kind of advances or loan taken by an employee that needs to be adjusted. So a lot of departments are integrated, and this is very important, guys. So that next is your cost accounting team, which generally, or the accounting team, which will be, processing or allocating the entire payroll cost to the different cost centers or processes. Now, apart from this, as I said, we are looking at involvement of tax and treasury team as well, because treasury team will be responsible for disbursement of the payroll, tax team will be responsible for the statutory dues, tax, TDS deposits, and so on. So I hope this one is clear to everyone. We are looking at from a perspective of the roles and responsibilities of different functions, and all the factors what we have discussed so far, uh, which results in the cost control. Now, when we talk about the labor cost control, guys, we are not only looking at from the perspective of any single department. We're talking about from the perspective of all these departments. We are looking at factors that contribute to this. We're talking about the assessment of the manpower departments. We're looking at HR. We're talking about control over timekeeping and booking. So we're talking about QC team, our engineering team, even the time and motion study. And we are looking at control over idle time and overtime and employee turnover. So when we say idle time and employee, overtime, we are looking at the production team themselves. We're talking about the production manager. They have to keep ensure that okay, that there is a time spent on a particular process as much as it should be. Instead of having too much of an overtime is not good, and having a kind of abnormal idle time is also not good. Although we'll be discussing how do we account for overtime, what on what basis the overtime payments can be made. Let's say that okay, we have a payment of an overtime based on the double the rate of a normal rate, or what does the Factories Workers Act and other statutory acts tell us? How to ensure that we keep a control over employee turnover. We'll discuss that. Why do the employees leave? Why do the employees leave? Can we control that? Because there is a cost attached even for employee turnover, wage and incentive systems. Yes, even for the payroll, there a lot of companies have evolved automation here. We have payroll softwares. Not only that, many companies have even outsourced the entire payroll function. Why? Because there are companies in the market who have expert processes. They provide their services to various companies in processing their payrolls, because they want the manufacturing companies and they want their clients to focus on their main processes. Do not worry about the payroll. We will handle it for you. We will be just needing some inputs which your departments can give us. So many companies even have outsourced the entire payroll system. Job evaluation and merit rating. This is again we discussed from an HR perspective. How does that, appraisals have very, very important aspect with respect to the employee motivation and morale overall. So guys, just to recapitulate, and then we will be kind of also discussing some aspects with respect to specificities of the payroll component. Uh, from an overall perspective, how does the payroll cycle looks like? Whatever we have discussed so far in terms of the process as such is reflected on this chart. So you can talk about the involvement, how different departments are integrated here. So you can see the payroll department at the center is getting all the inputs from various other departments. We're looking at timekeeping department, giving them the inputs with respect to time needed and their study. They're talking about the personnel or HR department, giving them the employee details. And they're also getting attendance information coming from the admin team. And what all the payroll is kind of processing, they are kind of submitting that to the treasury team to pay the salary, or the disbursement team to pay the salary, and the cost accounting or the accounting and finance team then is ensuring that that gets allocated to the different cost centers. And as I said, the responsibility for even the positing the taxes withheld, employee provident fund, any other statutory deductions that happens is also responsibility of the tax team. Now, one thing is also important, guys. One is the pre-preparation of the payroll. One is post. What is post? As in, we are talking about a lot of reportings that may be required. We talk about the TDS certificate. We talk about the pay slip, right? When you get salary, you after 2 or 3 days, you get your pay slip. Breakup of how the salary is determined for that particular month. So even that reporting part is very, very important aspect of the payroll cycle once the payroll is dispersed, guys. And that's why this end-to-end process becomes very, very important, right? From setting out these policies, setting about the payroll structure, from the collection of these inputs, and towards the end, we are looking at depositing these obligations and preparing those reports. So, guys, everyone okay? Everyone clear on the entire process? Any questions? Please let me know. Please confirm if you have any questions here so far. Okay, so I hope everyone doing good till now. Now I would like to talk about briefly on something called, guys, idle time, things like overtime, and then we'll be looking at few questions before we move on to the payment systems. So let's quickly look at how does or what are the different methods of late or over the last few years with respect to the timekeeping and time booking. As we say that there are two parts here, right? We're talking about two parts, timekeeping and time booking. So I've already briefed you that earlier, a lot of organizations had a manual way of timekeeping. You had attendance register, some kind of token was there, used to be there in some factories. You used to give your token to the person who's taking the responsibility, and used to get the token back at the end of the day. That person used to do all the entries. But the issue with the manual, what do you think, guys? What could be the issue with the manual timekeeping? Anyone like to think? Let's say you have an attendance register. What kind of issues would there be with the manual timekeeping, guys? Of course, it is itself time consuming. Collating that is not easy, but could there be inaccuracies in the data itself? Yes, why not? Possibilities of proxies, right? Possibilities of proxies would be there. You are not in a mood to go to office. Your friend kind of putting the proxy for you as well over there. So manual timekeeping had always their issues, not only in terms of the input, but also in terms of the collating the data. And that's why this kind of paved it way, paved the way towards the automated method. So from manual, most of the companies, I'm sure in many of the Indian factories, though, we may still have the things like attendance register if the software has not been reach to that granular root level. Gradually it is kind of implemented in every sector. Sweetie says falsification with information. Absolutely perfect, Sweetie. That's what we discussed. So we are paving the way from manual timekeeping to automated methods, which initially included the punch cards, as I said, ID cards. uh, I also have worked in organizations, guys, where they had very interesting systems of security check-ins. Like, for example, specifically in IT companies, they generally check if you're kind of bringing in your laptop or taking out a laptop from the company. They would have a sticker on a laptop. Is it the laptop which is allocated to you? They want to ensure that there is no misappropriation of assets. They have a random checks of the employees entering into, entering out. In companies like outsourcing organizations, they don't allow you to carry storage devices. So that which companies which are having very various policies, guys, when it comes to capturing the attendance. I can share one more interesting example. Let's say a company had a policy at some point of time that the person is entering into the company by, let's say, they have a biometric also. Like, you have a punch card that needs to be swiped, but then you have, let's say, a thumb which has to be pressed over there as a biometric, which will then open the gate for you. So unless and until you have the punch card and your thumb, you can't really enter, because only with the punch card there could be an issue. What if you are carrying two punch cards, you are swiping two punch cards, someone else attendance also is being marked. So with the combination, it kind of killed that possibility of alteration or any kind of a tricks which people could do. But then I'm just giving one more example, that let's say the one company had a policy that the first login and the last logout is the way we will be tracking the time of the people working here. So let's say a person enters into office at 8 a.m. and is leaving the organization at 7:30 p.m. Boss is really happy, right? This guy is working really hard, working at 8 a.m. and kind of going back at 7:30 p.m. So what they do is, what actually is happening is, of course, on some of the days that guy is really, really working hard. On some other days, what he's doing is logging at 8 a.m., checking out the emails, wrapping up some pending stuff, houses nearby, going back at 11 a.m., having some brunch at home, going to a restaurant or spending some good time. On some days, even watching a movie, coming back to office at 5 p.m., sitting there at 7:38 p.m. and, wrapping up their entire work, the remaining work, remaining emails. Boss is happy. This guy always works late. What do you think? It's a good idea, bad idea? From a company, of course, a bad idea, right? How did the companies tackle those scenarios? As I said, many roles even require you to be at a client place. You're not even in office. So your manager should know. So many companies implemented certain changes in the attendance policies also, guys. For example, as I said, the same example, if I continue, the policy was the first login and the last logout would give the attendance. Now this guy is having 12 hours a day. Very interesting. 12 hours a day would also result in some kind of overtime calculation. So it can actually result in you know kind of fraudulent activities, in terms of that the person is getting overtime, but has the person actually worked? And that is why time booking is also very important, guys. We'll talk about that in a meantime. So what many companies did was, they implemented a policy. Let's take an example that any person, any worker, or any employee in a company with having a checkout time. Let's say this is something which could be configured in a software. Any checkout and the subsequent check-in with the punch in with that ID card is 3 hours or more, let's say, or 2 hours or more. Most of the companies implemented 3 hours. So let's say if someone is entering out of the office at, let's say, 11:30 and coming after 2:30, the software would immediately trigger an email to the supervisor. And attendance for that day has to be approved by the supervisor. They brought up that change. They don't want that person is half of the time is not in the office actually. Now, but what about those roles where the role is actually with the client place? Do you want more work? Do you want burden for the process managers? Of course, there are ways to handle it. You could waive off a particular requirement for different teams. Those are always at a client place. But I hope you guys are understanding how the time has evolved, how everything has kind of evolved from a manual to the automated ways, why the policies kept on evolving. And I'm sure with AI into the place, things will keep on updating as we move on, right? So, so as I said, as much as timekeeping is important, guys, time booking is also important. So I said time booking as in how much work you did to various projects, or so we're looking at two things, guys. One, time card for each employee. As I said, time sheet. So many companies require employees to submit a time sheet every Friday on what all projects they worked, how many hours they gave on every day. Many people do it as a habit on a daily basis so that they get a tracking of what they are doing. On the same side, let's say when I say that okay, there are 50 people who are submitting a timesheet on a Friday, and there are 5 or 7 people who are working on that project. So when I look at 50 different timesheets, out of that, I pick these 7 people work on this project, let's say Project Xenia. Now, if I were to pick what is the time spent in Project Xenia, I would probably allot or assign a cost center to Project Xenia. As soon as I retrieve the data of Project Xenia, I will see the names of those 5, 6 people and how much hours they have spent in. So we are looking at time be booking, and we can retrieve the information two ways. Either we can retrieve the information by looking at the time card for each job, where multiple people gave the time to a particular process, or otherwise for an individual employee we can see okay how much they are working on different projects. So there are two ways of looking at it, right? Either we are saying that okay, what how much time has been totally spent on each job, or how much time a person individually is giving to different projects. And this is very much facilitated by the automation, guys, because what we are looking at here is an automation where you are submitting the information in a software, and it's up to the report extractors. They can extract the report for different cost centers, different processes, different projects, or they can extract the reports for different employees, depends on the requirement. Now having said that uh, we are looking at now analysis of the time spent. Gave the example, person coming in at 8 a.m., going at 7:30 p.m. Is he or she really doing an overtime, or is there an idle time which is actually part of the process which can be avoided? Uh, Let me ask a question here to everyone. Of all the teams we have discussed, the different functions we talked about, different departments we talked about, which team could be responsible, or which team could be useful in identifying any idle times and proper utilization of the same? Tell me, guys, which team could be critical to play a role in identifying any idle times or non-productive times, and work around better ways to assign those extra hours or unutilized hours to other projects? Which team will play an instrumental role here? So let's see the answers here. Anyone? Looking at the query panel as well. So which team will have an important role here, guys? Uh, Sweetie says timekeeping department and time booking department. Okay. But Sweetie, we are talking about the various departments, right? We are looking at the functions we discussed already in terms of these teams. We are looking at the personal department. So when you're saying timekeeping and time booking, we're actually talking about the admin department, right? But what I'm trying to say that this is the team who's capturing the information and giving the reports to the payroll team. But when it comes to the time, actually time taken and reassigning any kind of unutilized hours, don't you think the engineering and work study department would be having a very major role to play, considering that they are anyways doing time motion studies? So what is time motion study? They will probably sit with a clock while you are working on a report. They will see how much time you will normally take, and they will always have some margins plus and minus on that time, because you could have some heavy reports on some days, some lighter reports on some day. So the engineering and works department have a good role to play here, guys. So let's discuss what is idle time, what is overtime, and then we will attack a couple of questions as well. So the time which No production is carrying out. Time during which no production is carried out. Why? Because the worker was idle, but they're still paid. Time is time, right? So you were idle, but you are still paid here. So that means, in nutshell, we are looking at a difference between a time paid and time booked. That's your ideal time, right? You have booked, let's say in a time sheet, you have booked 34 hours. But how much hours during a week you are paid for? 40 hours. 6 hours is my ideal time. Now, what is that cause of the ideal time? Remember the discussion we had in the material costing as well? Something like a normal and abnormal loss. So we are looking at a normal ideal time and abnormal ideal time. Now, what is the normal idle time? Normal idle time is just part of the process, guys. It is part of the process. It cannot be avoided or reduced. Think about a simple break, talking about lunchtime. It's like even biologically, at 100% efficiency, our brain works at potential capacity of 83% and not 100%, right? So what happens here is that we're talking about lunchtime. We're talking about a person has to switch from one job to another job. That switch over time, machine setup time. All these are normal part of the process, and because they cannot be avoided, they cannot be reduced. They're part and parcel of the process, guys. It's important to understand that they will be always part of the cost of production for direct workers, at least. So they will be part. But if I talk about the idle time for indirect workers, of course that will be involved in the overheads. But we are not charging that to P&L. But when we talk about the abnormal idle time, which could be avoided, better control, things like we can probably split the factors for abnormal idle time so that we can analyze the causes. We can split the abnormal idle time into two, due to controllable factors or due to uncontrollable factors. So there could be controllable factors like power breakdown or lack of training, lack of supervision. So that can be worked upon. There could be factors which are beyond your control, right? Machine breakdowns. But anyways, when we talk about these abnormal idle time, we will charge them to the P&L, guys. We will not include them in cost of production, either into the direct labor cost or through overheads. We are charging them to profit and loss. That's for idle time. And what is overtime? Any work done over and above your normal working hours is overtime. We are looking at overtime in a sense that a person may be required to do overtime as part of a particular project or requirements, I would say, of a particular customer or a particular period where there is a statutory reporting coming up or there is a special demand if it's a manufacturing company, and overtime is the need for the hour. Now, sometimes what may happen here is, guys, it also depends on, overtime is count of whose request. We'll talk about that, but because this is over and above the normal working hours, it is important to understand on what basis the overtime payment will be made. Generally, I'm sure everyone agrees with me, overtime payment should be more than the normal payment, guys. Do you guys agree with that? Whatever rate a person is being paid for a normal working hours, overtime payment should be more than that. Let's say someone is getting let's say 600 per hour, but if you're spending 2 hours extra, you may want a higher number than 600 for those 2 hours at least. So in that case, what overtime payment is basically the wages paid for the overtime at normal rate plus the premium extra payment for the overtime work. You talk about people working in double shifts also. Sometimes let's take an example of a simple household. I'm sure many of you have ever contracted, or your parents have contracted some kind of a painters or workers for doing some kind of a work, renovation work at home, guys. I'm sure, and there would have been a couple of ways how those workers are compensated, either on a daily basis per day or on the basis of overall task. And when you have allotted the work on the overall task, they will generally probably work more hours because they know that they are anyways getting paid for it. They would have included the cost in the overall task. They would be spending not 8 hours, they may be working 10 to 12 hours because they want to wrap up that project, right? So overtime payment will always be more than the normal payment. Even the Factories Act 1948 here is telling that if the worker is working in a factory for more than 9 hours or 48 hours in a week, then his or her wage rate should be twice his ordinary rate of wages for the overtime only. So we have to comply with these provisions, guys. So we need to understand, if our establishment, if our company is, subject to these provisions of Factories Act, of course, we need to be very, very careful on these compliances part as well. Because even for the wages, even for the factories, guys, sometimes the payment is done on per hour basis. Sometimes it's even on the piece rate basis. I will talk about the payment system after some questions, right? So before I reach there, I would like to talk about, okay, how do or where do I charge this overtime cost? But it depends on the cause of the overtime. It depends on the cause of the overtime, why the overtime was actually required in the first place. That will decide the root treatment for that overtime payment is. So let's kind of talk some scenarios. We think if the overtime is required to cope up with general production plan or for meeting urgent orders. So we're talking about general production plan or for meeting urgent orders. This is generally treated as overhead cost of a particular department or the cost center which works overtime. So we are treating that as an overhead cost. But if that overtime is basically at the desire of the customer, you wanted it, you want a particular thing to be done in 20 hours. That means a company would be charging the overtime directly to you. So they'll be charging the overtime directly to that job itself. If the overtime is because of fault of another department or involvement of another department who took some time of your workers in some other project, then that overtime should be charged to another department here. Yes, why we are talking about various departments. Sometimes, students ask me that, sir, at the end of the day, we are looking from a company perspective. All these departments are within one company. Whether I allocate the cost to one department or other department, how does it matter? At a corporate level, it may not matter. But we talk about at a departmental level, every departmental manager may have his or her own objectives. We call it as KPIs, key performance indicators. One of those could be keeping the cost minimum. Would it be, that easy that okay, you allot overtime to another department and they happily accept it? Of course, then there can be a debate, there can be a healthy discussion around. If you're allotting or allocating the overhead cost to a particular department, right? Having said that, let's say if the overtime is because of the factors beyond everyone's control. Let's say production was stopped because of some abnormal factors, like we're talking about flood, anything happened, major power breakdown which happened entirely that vicinity or that area. In that case, you are not charging to the production, not charging this cost to a particular department. You are taking that to the costing P&L, guys. We will be expensing off the overtime expenses here. Is everyone clear on this? Are we ready for a few questions here? So let's see. Let's start with a couple of brain teasers here. Second. So we have a couple of questions. Question number one, question number two. I want you guys to clearly attack this. So when you give your answers, please mention the question number along with that. Okay, getting some answers here. Is when you're answering question number one, are we considering the fact that urgent order would be coming from a specific customer? What do you mean by urgent orders? As in, like, specific customer would have given that order? Just think that perspective also. Okay, so most of the people are giving me answers. So people are giving me answer for question number one as B. Let's see what others have given on the query panel. Okay, maybe people are giving me answers as question number one as B, guys. I'm slightly surprised. We're saying urgent orders, but what if urgent order is obviously most of the times the urgent orders would be from a particular customer? And if that is the case, are we treating it as an overhead cost or are we actually treating that as part of respective job here? That is what I want you guys to think. If if my urgent orders are part of the production plan, then of course it could be overhead cost as well. But if we are saying urgent orders by a specific customer, we would be talking about this to be charged as a respective job, guys. So I think I can give a benefit of the doubt. Some people said overhead cost. Probably you are assuming this that this urgent order is part of my production itself, production plan itself. Question number two. Some people are answering me as C. Absolutely correct, Sirisha, Sweetie, for question number one. Some people are giving me question number two as B. Some people are telling me C, guys. So out of the following methods, attendance is marked by recognizing an employee based on the physical and behavioral traits. The key word here is physical and behavioral traits. And we discussed this specifically, guys. When we talk about the punch card attendance, it was just a physical trait that you were just swiping it, right? That's it. But when we talk about the biometrics, sweetie, do not worry about that. And that's why I said that I will be giving the benefit of the doubt. The question would be clear. Don't worry. Okay. So physical and behavioral traits, when we are looking at both the parts, we are not talking only with respect to your punch card. Let's say we are also talking about, let's say, a fingerprint scanner, retina scanner. So that means we are looking at a combination, but at least it will require you the, because the word is and, it will require you the biometric attendance system. Punch card alone will not do. Attendance register was anyways the manual way of looking at things, guys. Nicely attempted this. Very nicely answered this. So let's now talk about an illustration from your study material itself. Uh, it's a very, very good one. We are looking at how we are looking at accounting for overtime payment here. So let's work around this one together. In a factory, the basic wage rate is rupees 100 per hour and overtime rates are as follows. Before and after normal working hours, 175% of basic wage rate. So if I'm talking about early morning or late evening, we're saying 175% of the basic wage rate. Sundays and holidays, if you're working on a Sunday or a holiday, 225% of the basic wage rate. And during the previous year, the following hours were both. Normal time, 1 lakh hours. Overtime before and after working hours, 20,000 hours. Overtime and Sundays and holidays is 5,000 hours we are looking at. Following hours have been worked specifically on a particular job, Z, guys. So what we are expecting here is that we have to calculate the labor cost chargeable to job Z and overhead in each of the following situations. We are saying where the overhead is worked regularly throughout the year as a policy due to workers' shortage, where overtime is worked irregularly to meet the requirements of production, and where the overtime is worked at the request of the customer to expedite the job. Case, I'm just giving a minute everyone to go through the requirements here, information given to us so that we can attack this together. I hope the given information is clear to everyone. Okay. So guys, what should be our starting point here? I think let's recapitulate the given information to whatever they have given, and then we can accordingly work on the requirements. So when we're looking at a lot of factors given to us here, we can say that okay, the requirement in terms of the working, they've given us the wage rate, they have given us the requirements in terms of what will be the overtime rates. So if I were to calculate here, what will be the basic wage rate here? What will be the basic wage rate? We are looking at the very, very first line, which is given as 100 per hour. For overtime, before and after normal working hours, we are looking at 175 per hour. For our Sundays and holidays, we are looking at 225 per hour. Guys, is everyone clear? I think that's pretty much basic given to us. We also need to understand from the requirement perspective. The first question said, when overtime is worked regularly as a policy due to workers' shortage. Guys, what happens in that case when we're looking at regularly as a policy? What do you think? Are we saying that if it is as part of the policy, as part of the general production, then we are looking at from a perspective of charging the entire cost as overhead? What do you think? Or if it is for a particular job, you can charge that to that particular overhead to that particular job. Yes. So if I talk about the amount, the requirement of the first question, where the overtime is worked regularly throughout the year, what we need to calculate here is what is the total payments made and what is my overall rate, including the overtime, right? Including the overtime. So let's calculate this. And then accordingly, we will see how much uh, cost we can allocate to the particular job here. In this case, overall, in the previous year, we had a normal time of 100,000 hours or 1 lakh hours. So how much payment would have made for the normal wages, guys? For the normal wages, we are talking about 1 lakh into 100. So that means we are looking at a 1 CR. We are talking about overtime in two parts, before and after. That will be 20,000 into 175. So 20,000 into 175, we're looking at 35 lakhs, guys. Just double check the calculation part. We're talking about overtimes on holidays. We're looking at 5,000 to 225. So in this case, I'm getting 11 lakh 25,000. But what I need to understand, guys, is how much payment I've made overall in totality is 1 crores 46 lakhs 25,000 for how many hours? 1 lakh 25,000 hours. So if I have to calculate my average wage rate, what will be that? Can anyone tell me? What will be my average wage rate, guys, based on this calculation? What will be my average wage rate here? Maybe 1 crore 46 lakhs 25,000 divided by 1 lakh 25,000 hours. Do it at this. So this is 117. So we're saying 117 per hour is my average wage rate, which includes, of course, the incorporates the overtime part as well. Now, the requirement of the question number A is where overtime is worked regularly throughout the year as a policy, or we're talking about due to the workers' shortage. So in that case, in point number A, if I were to say that, okay, what is the labor cost chargeable to job Z in this case? We have simply said that, okay, they have worked 1125 hours. We can simply say that, okay, 1125 into 117. Does that make sense to everyone? Because this is part of the that particular job as an overall policy. So 1125 into 117, that should be my answer for option number A. That means we are giving ourselves a 1,31,625. Yes, this is clear. The next two are kind of interesting. Part B says where the overtime is worked irregularly to meet the requirements of production. What do you do then? If we are saying that overhead is kind of overtime is worked irregularly, can we say in that case we will be charging the basic wage rate to that job and any overtime premium will be going to the factory overhead? Yes or no? I want a quick confirmation for our understanding that how we are treating this. We are talking about irregularly, how we are treating this. We are saying in this case, we will be not be charging this to as an overall basis, but rather we will be charging the basic wage rate to this particular job and remaining to the overhead. So how do we calculate this, guys? How do we calculate this? Of course, we have got a total number of hours with us, 1125 for job Z. However, that job also has some overtime payment. We have to also understand this part that when we are paying a rate of 175 and 225, we need to understand what is the overtime premium here. What is the overtime premium here? If I look at the before and after the normal working hours, can I say overtime premium is 75 rupees per hour? For Sundays and holidays, can I say it is 225 minus 100? So basically, we are saying that overtime payment minus the normal wage rate. So if I look at my formula, what we discussed over there in the last slide, we were talking about overtime payment is wages paid for the overtime at normal rate plus premium payment for overtime. So here what we're talking about is segregating the premium payment. So what we are looking at here is for the part B, where the overtime is worked irregularly, we are saying that, okay, the basic wage rate could be charged to the job and the overtime premium to be charged to the factory overhead. That means we are simply saying that entire 1125 hours. So the normal rate 1125 to 100, we're looking at 1,12,500 is kind of going to this particular job here, the job Z. And for the overhead part, where we are talking about the overhead premium, we can calculate that on the differential piece. For example, we are saying that, okay, 100 hours were worked over time before and after working hours. So we're saying that, okay, over and above 100, 75 per hour was paid, 75 into 100, plus on holidays, we are talking about 225 per hour. That means over and above the 100, we are talking about a 125 per hour. So 125 into 25. So how much this comes, guys? We're talking about 75 into 100 plus 125 into 25. Sirisha, Sweetie, everyone clear till now? If someone said something. Anyone asking any doubt here, guys? Is everyone clear till this point? So we are looking at a 7500 plus 3125, I guess. Hence, we are looking at a total of 10,625 going on to the overhead. So in the first case, we were saying that where the overtime is worked regularly throughout the production process. So we calculated an average rate and we applied the entire amount to the job Z because this was as part of the policy. This was working for all the departments accordingly. However, in the second case, it is irregularly to meet the requirements of the production, and hence we took the overtime premium to the factory overhead, guys. My question would be for you guys, what do we do for the third scenario? What do we do for the third scenario? Anyone get to answer? Where the overtime is worked at the request of the customer. I think we did an MCQ for this. We did an MCQ for this one. In that case, do you agree that the entire amount should be allocated to the job Z? So the overtime premium should be going to the job Z, yes or no? If I'm looking at the requirement of the question number C here, I'm saying an overhead is worked at the request of the customer to expedite the job. In that case, overtime premium should be charged to the job Z itself. Can I say, can I humbly say, the calculation mechanism would be pretty much same what we did in point number B. The only difference is for question number C, the entire amount is taken to job Z here. So we're talking about entire amount of 112,500 plus 10,625. So the 123, 125 entirely going to job Z here. Because we are talking about at the request of the customer. We are not taking anything to the overhead. We're charging the entire premium to the particular job. I hope all the three scenarios are clear to everyone here. Any doubts, please let me know. Any doubts so far? Anyone, guys? Yes, absolutely correct, Unikrishnan. We have charged to the product. In this case, of course, we are talking about a particular job, so we have charged to the job. Nice. Okay, so what we go next towards is guys a wage payment and incentive schemes. But I believe it's we can if you want we can take a quick break here before we move on to the next section for the wage payment and incentive schemes so that we are all fresh. Okay, before that, Unikrishnan said, can you please repeat the scenario two? Definitely. So in scenario two, what did we do is we were doing the overtime irregularly to meet the requirements of different projects or as per the requirements of the productions. Right. So what do we do here is in this case, what we are saying that okay, overall we charging the cost, the normal payment to the particular job. But when it comes to the overtime premium, guys, when we talk about overtime premium, if it is to general production requirement, the overtime premium should be recorded as an overhead, right? So we are talking about the overhead premium should be treated as an overhead cost of a particular department. But if that special request came from this particular department, which anyway is happening in point number C, then we are charging the entire cost. Actually, let me show you this. We discussed this as point number one here, right? General production. So we're talking about the overtime premium should be treated as an overhead cost. The word was overtime premium here. I hope, Unikrishnan, that is clear now. And thanks for getting that clarity. Very nice. Okay, so guys, now before we move on to the wage payment and incentive schemes, we can quickly take a 5 minutes break, right? Then I want everyone to come fresh, have your water, tea, coffee, whatever, and then we'll start discussion around wage payment, understand what are this is important section, and we'll do some questions also on the other side, guys. Let's take a quick 5 minutes break here. So we all got a much deserved break here. We resume our discussion on the other side, and we are looking at now some wage payment and incentive schemes. This is a very important section with respect to the questions that has been tested of late in the examinations. We are looking at various. So when we discuss about the compensation part, how the employees are being paid, there are various schemes or there are various ways different organizations, depending on factory it is or it is a service industry, they have different systems of their own for making the payments here. So it could be time based, what we just saw in our previous example. Time worked into the rate for that time. It could be per hour, it could be per month, it could be per day, it could be output based when we talk about the piece rate system, number of units into the rate per unit. It could be combination of the two. Uh, One thing which has been very, very important and have been frequently tested, guys, is the premium bonus method here. Specifically, two methods we will be talking about. One is the Halsey plan, Halsey premium plan, and one is the Rowan plan. These two have been tested, and we'll be looking at some examples of how do they differentiate amongst each other. Uh, we are looking at from a perspective of the calculation to maintain the balance between the employee morale and also the cost aspect because you needed to keep the cost minimum. Right? If I talk about the Halsey premium plan, guys, let's actually talk about these two. If I talk about the Halsey premium plan, we're looking at there could be possibilities. Let's say, okay, first of all, both these premium bonus methods. What is the premise of these bonus methods, guys? The premise bonus, a premise behind these bonus methods is till now we discuss overtime. But what if we are actually saving time for the company? What we are doing, what if we are doing a particular task earlier than that was probably planned for that? So that means we are probably passing on, we are saving on the cost, we are saving on the time, but we want to pass on some benefit to the workers also so that they keep themselves motivated. So that is the fundamental premise that they are expecting premium bonus on the time saved. So if there is no saving in time, the workers is paid only his day basis or regular wages. But if we complete the work in less than the standard time, I'm talking about the Halsey premium first. We are looking at if this guy is doing the work in less than the standard time, he gets a bonus of 50% of wages saved. That means if you are passing the 50% to the employee, that means the remaining 50% is actually being shared by the employer himself because he's not passing the companies are passing the entire benefit to the employee here. So in that case, what will be the wages, guys? Time taken multiplied with the time rate plus 50% of the time saved, not the entire time, into the time rate. Let's say a person is taking completing a task in 6 hours. Just taking a small example, a person is taking a 6 hours here for a 8 hour job. And let's say the rate is 300 per hour. So what we are looking at here is time taken into 300. How much time you have saved here? 2 hours. So one, that is 50% of the two, 1 into 300. So that will be the wages under the Halsey premium plan here. So in this case, we are saying that the employer is sharing 50% benefit. Now we need to understand here is from a perspective of the incentivization we are offering to the employee. Is the employee happy? I think he would be happy, but he may not. The incentive may not be as strong because more you work, you will be only getting the 50% of the benefit. Doesn't you don't get any better off, right? So that sharing idea may not be as much appreciated, but on the positive side, of course, you are getting rewarded in some way, right? So that's your Halsey premium plan, guys. Let's also discuss what is the other one. What's this Rowan plan? Rowan premium plan. Now this one is on a similar premise though. The calculation piece is slightly different. We are saying that okay, standard time allowance is fixed for the performance and the bonus is paid. So the common point in both the plans is that bonus is paid if the time is saved. But look at the calculation part. In the wholesale premium, we are paying 50% of the time saved and we are rewarding that to the employee. Here, we are saying there is a calculation mechanism which entitles the employee the proportion of the time wages as time saved bears to the standard time. So let's say if we are talking about the 8-hour job in the previous example, let's take the previous example which I took for the wholesale premium, right? So what I'm saying is that in this case, the wages will be time taken into rate per hour. That means 6 into 300. Now this time, this portion is absolutely same here. But the second part, we are saying time saved. Time saved is 8 minus 6, 2 hours. Time allowed was 8 hours. So we multiply. So basically, whatever that proportion is of the time taken, that will be my bonus here. See this difference, guys. Earlier, we were straight away saying 50% of the time saved. So we were calculating 2100, I guess. But now we are saying we are calculating this as a proportion of the time wages as the time saved bears to the standard time. So time saved upon time allowed, that means 2 by 8, multiplied with the time taken. So that means if I look at this particular case, what is the total amount this guy is getting? So 2 by 8 into 6, 1.5 into 300. So this is getting 2550. Sorry, 1800 is that, right? Give me a second. So 6 into 300 is 1800 plus 1.5 into 300. We are getting 2250. A slightly higher amount is the result here. So what has happened is you're not giving 50% or you're not kind of straightforward imparting this message to the employees that, okay, we will be sharing 50% with you, rest of the 50% we are keeping. We think that, okay, you work as per your maximum efficiency and we will be sharing the proportionate reward to you guys. That's what the employer is trying to say. From a analysis of this method, I think initially you may feel that, okay, this is a little bit complex in terms of the calculation. But what we are also ensuring that they are not getting any clear message that, okay, employer is sharing. Of course, employer will be getting the remaining benefit, but it is actually not on the face of it discouraging an employee. One more thing, guys, is of course, any kind of a sharing may not be appreciable by the employee, but what happens is sometimes in the urge of saving time, what do you think? This is a question for everyone, guys. If a worker knows that you will be getting extra time or extra payment for the time saved, what would be your object? What would be your goal? If you are a worker, you know that okay, you will be getting some incentive for saving time. What will be your attempt? Okay, Sirisha, I will do that. I had to use that because of the dark shades, but we'll kind of change it to the darker color. So my question is, what do you think a worker would try to do in this case? Whether we are looking at whether we are looking at wholesale premium or roll premium method, my question is, what would be the worker trying to achieve when they know that okay, they will be being paid extra, saving some time? What do you think, guys? Try to complete the job early to save more time. Unikrishnan says, Sweetie says, very nice, guys. Very, very logical responses here. Superb, I would say. Now, if that is the case, can we say a quality of the product could be hampered? You're trying to do something very quickly that it could impact. There is a possibility, right? It could impact the quality unless you bring in the process efficiency. That's a different ball game. So you want to maintain that balance also. You want to maintain that balance also. as an employer, as an organization. You don't want that quality to suffer. Let us look at an analysis wherein we will see which of the plans is better. Is it the premium plan or a health premium plan will be better? There is an illustration 9, in your study material. Illustration 9. Uh, Let me quickly take you to that, wherein there was a question with respect to the bonus paid under wholesale premium, with the bonus at 50% time saved equals the bonus paid under round scheme. And we are asking, when will this statement hold good? So basically what we need to calculate is what will be the bonus under one scheme, what will be the bonus under other scheme, and we have to equate that, right? That's what we're trying to say. And they're saying that 50% of the time saved equals the bonus paid under the Roman scheme. So what will be, so in that case, maybe what we need to know that, okay, if we align these equations, let's say, what we have learned so far, let me just use a pen here. Bonus under a wholesale plan, we have learned that, okay, this is 50% of the time saved. Time saved is standard hours minus actual hours. And under Robin plan, it is a ratio here. It's a ratio here. Time saved upon time allowed multiplied by actual hours. So if we equate these two equations, what we are getting here is a number of 50 by 100. That means what we are looking at is that the actual time taken is 50% of the time allowed. The bonus under both the plans will be equal. Bonus under both the plans will be equal. So that's one analysis. When does this situation hold true? When the actual time is 50% of the time allowed. But there is a second part, which is a very interesting analysis. I would like to spend a couple of minutes. We are saying time allowed for a job is 8 hours. Hourly rate is 8. We have to prepare a statement showing bonus earned, total savings, and hourly savings. Right? So that means we need to see that, okay, how many hours are saved actually. If we have to prepare an analysis, we need to understand how many hours are saved here. So based on that, there's a very interesting table on the next page. So actually, let me take you back. I would like to discuss this one with you guys. Analysis of the two methods taken up from that illustration here. So by two columns, which becomes very important here, is the total earnings under respective method here. So we're saying health system total earnings and hourly earnings here in the health premium method. Similarly, total earnings under Rowan and hourly earnings under Rowan. So what I want to show you guys is what we have done is the standard hours remain 8 hours, but we have added 8 rows here. What if my actual hours is 8 hours, 7 hours, 6 hours, 5 hours, 4 hours, and so on? Because my time saved will obviously increase here. My time saved will always obviously increase here. If I complete this job in 1 hour, I'm getting 7 hours saved. But if I complete this job in 6 hours, I'm getting 2 hours saved. And accordingly, the bonus will keep on changing. But look at the bonus under, okay, let me just change this color to, let's say, a green here. I have a question for everyone, guys. If you look at the bonus under the two methods, here, which method do you think may not contribute to always push the employee to work harder, and it can impact the quality? Which method avoids that impact on quality here? Let's see if you guys can assess this for me. Which method can result in savings, but at the same time will ensure that there is not impact on quality in the surge of, doing the work too much quickly. You don't want to deteriorate the output. Which method we are looking at, guys? Let me know, please. Sweetie says Robin scheme. What about others? I think that's a very good answer. Why? Because do you see under the wholesale premium, the premium is increasing as quickly you are getting, more and more you're getting 50%. But because of the proportionate sharing under the Ruben scheme, I think it's the 50% mark where both the methods were giving you equal premium. That's actually the maximum premium you're getting in the Ruben system. And you can see then the total earnings beyond that are actually falling down in both the methods, though, but in the Rowan scheme, it is declining at a faster rate. That means it's not much of an incentive after that. Very nice. Sirisha, Uni Krishnan, everyone concluded the same. It is the Rowan system. So we are kind of concluding here that although the side impact could have been that you worked so far and you fast and you want to impact the quality, it may not have, because there is not much an incentive beyond the point. So as much as the worker would want to earn a premium, earn a bonus, you would want to maintain and sustain the quality of the product as well. I hope you guys appreciate, understand this analysis, and you can implement that based on the various questions that can be asked in the examinations. So let's tackle few questions, guys. Now, everyone ready for this? May I ask the usual question which I do? How is the Josh? Everyone doing good? Everyone understanding things? Are we ready for few practical stuff here? So let's target this question, guys, on the screen. A worker took 60 hours to complete a job in a factory. Normal rate of wages is 80 rupees per hour. The worker is entitled to receive bonus according to the health premium plan. Factory overhead is covered on the job at 60 per man hour actually worked. The factory cost is 37,280 and the material cost is given as 28,400. So there are two requirements here. Calculating the standard time for completing the job and effective hourly rate under the wholesale premium plan. And calculate the effective rate of earnings per hour if they were paid under the Rowan plan. So we talk about from both perspectives, guys. So how do we start this? What should be my starting point here? Any thoughts, guys? What should be my starting point? We are looking at the first point is in terms of the requirement of standard time for completing the job and effective hourly rate under wholesale premium. Standard time for completing the job is what we are looking at probably. So what is the standard time, guys? That would be the part one when we are looking at a standard. So right now, what is given to us here is how many hours you have worked, right? We have given how many hours this worker has taken, 60 hours. We do not know the standard time here. Hold on. We are talking about the factory or the cost of the job is 37,280, whereas the material cost is 28,400 here. And we're also saying that factory overhead is recovered on the job at 60 per man hour actually worked. So when I say cost of a job, guys, Sirisha says standard time is 60 hours. May not be because this is the time the worker took, Sirisha. So what I'm trying to calculate here is if I'm saying cost of a job, you guys all agree that cost is equal to material plus labor plus overhead. You guys all agree with that? So in this case, cost is given to us as 37,280. Material cost is given to us as 28,400. Labor, we need to know what is the overhead part, guys. Anyone tell me what should be the overhead here? I think overhead is given to us as 60 per man hour actually work. So 60 into 60 is 3600. So how much is the labor cost we are looking at here? How much is the labor cost we are looking at? We are looking at how much amount of labor cost? 37,280 minus 32,5280 is my labor cost. And they're saying that the worker is currently entitled to receive the bonus under Halsey premium plan, guys. Halsey premium plan. And under Halsey premium, I believe we are all talking about 50%, right? 50% sharing. So let's try to do this calculation. We don't know the standard hours yet. We don't know the standard hours yet. So let's say we talk about the time taken is 60 hours. Wage rate is 60, wage rate is 80 per hour. So if I talk about Halsey premium, guys, we are saying that okay, 60 into 80 plus 50% of, let's say this is my standard time, minus 60 multiplied by 80 here. It should be 5280. Yes or no? Do you guys agree with my equation, guys, for first requirement? 5280 is the total labor cost we have derived, which is equal to the time taken into the rate plus 50% of the time taken into 50% of the time saved actually. 50% of the time saved, right? So we could say time saved or we can calculate the standard time directly. That's okay. One of the same thing. So if this is the case, using that equation, if I were to compute, that means we're looking at standard time minus 60 upon 2, half of this into 80 should be equal to 50 to 80 minus 4800. That means 480 we are looking at. So standard time minus 60 is equal to 480 upon 80 into 2 here. Okay, let's just give me a second. Let's just correct this up. Okay, how much standard time you will get, guys? Can anyone help me on this? How much standard time you're getting it? If this is the case, Pratima says 72. Is everyone getting 72 here? We're getting 960 upon 80 plus 60. So standard time is what we are looking at. 12 plus 60, that is 72. So that means time saved is 12 hours. Standard time is 72. Absolutely correct, Bhumika, Pratibha. So that means we are now getting closer to our requirements. We did not know the standard time. We know the standard time now 72 hours. Actual hour worked is 12 hours here. So what is the effective hourly rate under Halsey premium? I think that is something we could have easily calculated that anyways. The requirement was what is the standard time for completing the job? We know that part, 72 hours. We need to calculate the effective hourly rate. So 5280 is what we have paid and the actual hours is 60. So what is the rate here? I'm getting 88 per hour. So the first requirement is met, guys. 88 per hour. Is everyone with me on this? I think first part is clear to everyone. We can then now move on to the Rowan plan. The second requirement here is calculate the effective rate of earnings if wages would have been paid under Rowan plan. So the point is if wages would have been paid. So let's say if we would have followed the Rowan plan, what would have been my wages here? Who will tell me? You guys can help me in expediting the calculation here. So we're saying that 60 hours we took, 80 is my rate. We now know that 12 hours were saved here and the standard time was 72. That proportion of the time worked into 80 again. So we are looking at what amount here? I'm getting 5,600. 4,800 plus 800 here, it's coming out to 5,600. Is everyone getting 5,600 here? Let me know. And if that's the case, if 5,600 is the correct computation, your effective rate is a 5,600 divided by 60 hours. Thanks, Bhumika. So 5,600 divided by 60 hours is 93.33. 93.33 per hour here. I hope both the parts of the question are clear to you guys. Hmm. If that is the case, guys, I would like to just giving 1 minute before I move on. Sirisha, absolutely correct. Any doubts so far, please let me know, guys. Before doing more questions here, I would like to just quickly talk about 5-7 minutes more on last aspect of the concept here. Absolutely correct, Sweetie. So we just quickly talk about now something with respect to the absorption of wages, guys. Before we go to the next questions, we're talking about what all the employee cost includes. How do we absorb the wages? It's generally doesn't always involve only monetary benefits. We talk about the monetary payouts, we talk about the wages, DA, overtime, incentive, whatever we discussed. Even there are aspects of other, other, I would say, parts of the payroll, which is broken up into the allowances, something like HRA, LTA, and so on. But sometimes there are non-monetary benefits also, like canteen services, food at the employer premises, or any kind of a subsidized educational discount, or any kind of a medical facility. So all that also comprises of the entire employee cost. So how do we arrive at absorption of wages? So next week we will be having a discussion around absorption costing. At that time, we will be discussing the significance of this per hour rates, what we are calculating today. So rate per hour is combining the two, guys. Total estimate cost of monetary benefits and non-monetary benefits divided by the budgeted direct employee hour normal minus normal idle time. Remember, what we discussed is that the normal idle time is something you have to take into account. So if I say that, okay, total working hours is, let's say for about 9 hour, let's take an example, 9 hour a day to 22 working days in a month, we're getting 198 hours. Let's say, but by normal idle time is 1 hour every day. Let's say 30 to 40 minutes of lunch and 20 minutes here and there. So that means my actual hours, if I exclude the normal idle time, I will be saying that okay, it's 176 and one not 198. That means my rate per hour will go up. But we have to take into account of this normal idle time. But we will not incorporate abnormal idle time here. We already discussed this earlier. We will calculate the rate per hour by taking care of the normal idle time. And based on that, whatever the rate is, if at all there is any abnormal wastage of hours, that will be multiplied by this rate and taken to the P&L, just like we did for material as well. So this is the calculation of my rate per hour. Uh, One thing is also sometimes we assess the labor efficiency, right? For performance appraisal and all, we have to assess the labor efficiency, and we can simply assess the labor in terms of, you know, how much is more of the productivity, how much the time was allowed and what is the time taken. So when I say that, okay, the person is working with 120% efficiency, look at this formula, standard time allowed upon time taken. So let's say we are saying that, okay, a standard time allowed is 100. right? And I'm saying that this guy is working with 120% efficiency. What do you mean by what can anyone tell me what will be the time taken by that guy? Standard time taken is 100. Standard time taken is 100, and we are talking about 120% efficiency, guys. How much time that person would have been taking? 83.33 hours. Because if I'm saying 100 upon 83.33, that would probably give me a 120% efficiency here. See, I was telling you guys earlier that these days, most of the corporates have efficiency targets every year. So we are talking about, let's say, 10% efficiency every year. So you always have an eye on the labor efficiency, and that's where the work of the QC team, the engineering and works department also becomes very, very crucial. So labor efficiency is definitely very much important, critical to bring on improvements, of course, to understand the performance appraisal and so on. Uh, we also have to talk about the employee turnover, guys. We discussed why do the people leave the organization. You know, we are looking at various aspects. Gone are the days. There was a saying in industry. They say that people leave organizations. But then someone came up with an idea that people don't leave organizations. People leave bosses. People leave managers. So organization may not be good or bad, but the way you are handling your team becomes very, very important. So also, when I say employee turnover, I'm also thinking from a perspective of change in the compensation, not compensation, composition of the workforce. Now, that means there may not be only a proper, only a resignation and the people leaving the organization. There could be also a genuine restructuring happening in any organization. That also happens, in the industry. Let's say due to robotics, due to automation, there is a restructuring. They want to, expand. They want to absorb the existing workforce in some other projects, or they want to expand. They want to hire people, or they want to, unfortunately, pay some kind of a severance pay. They are asking people to leave because they don't need that much of a workforce. So, ordinarily, of course, we know that there could be more people who would be hired due to expansion, but what important point here is that there could be a scenario that people leaving the organization can bring in some cost, can result in some additional cost. That is, we are talking about attrition may not be good for the organization. Attrition may not be good for the organization because you will have your production flow could be impacted. There will be a cost of recruitment, cost of training. A lot of things are involved. But if we were to actually calculate the employee turnover, guys, the employee turnover, it's very important that we understand this, that rate of change in the composition of employee during a specified period as measured against a suitable index. And there are three different methods of measuring here, guys. So that means in an industry, let's say there is an employee turnover. As I said, it's not about only leaving the organization. It's about how the composition is changed. So one is replacement method, which takes into consideration the actual replacement of the employees irrespective of people leaving. But this doesn't take into account, mind you, the replacement method doesn't take into account the new people who are added as per the expansion plan here. So replacement is the number of employees replaced during the year, irrespective of actual numbers leaving. Let's say there are 50 people who left the organization during a year, but only 30 of them were replaced. So probably we are talking about only 30 of them here upon the average number of employees. The separation method takes care of the number of employees separated during the period. So this takes care of the entire separation, not only the actual replacement, number of employees separated during the period. And there is another method called flux method, which takes into account number of employees separated and number of employees replaced. So let's say there is a 50 people who are actually left, 30 people were replaced, 20 people did not. So 20 plus 30. So we're taking the entire 50 here. One more thing in terms of the employee turnover. I hope this is clear, guys. It's just a different mechanism to calculate the employee turnover, and we are not even only focusing on the people leaving. We are talking about the entire composition of the team, entire composition of the workforce here. So there are different ways to measure this. HR teams and different teams can keep an eye on these rates. For example, let me tell you, one of the important parameters against which the HR team is assessed is the attrition rate. So that's why the employee turnover becomes very, very important to keep an eye on, guys. Right? So we are looking at this part as well in terms of what is the total index for a particular year, what is an ideal target, what was the attrition rate last year. So this becomes very important for us. In terms of the general rule, as I said, we do not consider the number of people who are joining in, but in true sense, when I say that, okay, people who are joining into the organization due to an expansion plan, do you change the composition? Yes, you do. If you are expanding, then of course you are changing the composition of the workforce. So the total numbers people who are joining, that could be because of the two factors. One is, of course, the replacement of the people who left and people who are actually joining as part of the expansion plan. There is a term we call that is accessions, guys. Accessions. And when the number of accessions are considered, then of course my formula gets changed. We are not only looking at the separations, we are not only talking about the replacement, we are also talking about the new joinings. That's where the expansion can come into the picture. So we're saying that different ways of calculating the employee turnovers here. So, but why we are discussing this? Why employee turnover is important, guys? This is important because, as I said, because that could impact a lot of factors, including the flow of production, including the job security amongst the existing workers, including the time involved in time and cost involved in training them. It could result in productivity impact as well. So those effects are there because of the turnovers. But at the first place, why do people leave the organization? There are different causes. There are different causes which could be split into three parameters here: personal causes, unavoidable, avoidable causes. So personal causes is something which is generally beyond control of the organization, though. That's why we are calling that as a personal cause. We're saying that it could be a domestic issue or a family issue of the individual due to the some health reasons, or they're getting some better prospects, they want to move internationally, or there could be various personal causes. Similarly, unavoidable causes beyond everyone's control, even the person and the organization. Unfortunately, some accident happened and there is a disability, or the season or nature of the work, you can't do anything, or due to some kind of organizational decisions, the factory has to shift. But what organization can take into account is definitely the avoidable causes here. Avoidable causes is something that can be taken into account, that can be kept into consideration, that can be kept in a check. What about, as I said, that people do not leave the companies, people leave managers? What about the individual had a strained relationship, did not have a good working environment, was working on a less salary? As I said, at some point in various companies, there is something called benchmarking. We talked about technical skill mapping, right, where the job descriptions were refined. So a lot of efforts can go on to the avoidable causes, guys. HR can bring up schemes of retaining the employees, give them their career path, show them the roadmap, show them that the company believes in them, that they are the asset to the organization. Gone are the days, they used to be called in the industry that customer is the king. Many good organizations believe that the employee is the king. You take care of your employees, the employee will take care of your customers. So that's a very important aspect, guys. So avoidable costs is something where company can focus on and avoid the employee turnover, especially the attrition part, right? So that it can definitely save the cost, definitely improve the working environment, and it will definitely improve the productivity as well. Perfect. So I think from a concept perspective, that takes care of most of the critical labor components part. Before we go on to more practice or any more questions of practice, I would like to open this house for doubts, guys. Any doubts or whatever we have discussed, and after taking on those doubts, we can attack maybe another couple of questions. People here or on the query panel, on the Zoom here, any questions so far for any particular area? Any questions from Unikrishnan, Sirisha, Tamanna, Komal, here, Pratima, Rohani, anyone? You guys can either confirm any questions or if it's all going good, all clear. Tamanna, thanks for confirming. Tamanna confirmed, no doubts. Thanks, Rohani. Thanks a lot. So that means a few students have already confirmed, no doubt as of now. That means you are all set for maybe some more practice. You want more practice here? Okay, let's do that. Of course, if you have any questions, stop me and can discuss that. So let's discuss another question here. Or let me actually expose you to the another work case scenario, guys. Yes, you remember in the material session, I told you you have to be very much familiar with the case studies. So let's walk through a case study and let's try to attack some questions based on that. Let's target this. Okay, there was a question as I say, there's a question coming in from Sweetie. Difference between the Sweetie is asking me a question based on the employee turnover. Difference between the flux method and separation method. So, Sweetie, what happens is that in the flux, we are considering both the number of employees replaced and separated. In the separation, we are only focusing on the separated. That means separation means like you probably have people have left, you have not replaced them. As I said, sometimes organizations do that willfully because of the efficiency targets. That okay, there are 30 people who left the organization during the year, but they don't want to backfill the 30 people. They want to only hire 20 more people. So that means in terms of the number of employees separated during the year is 10 then. But whereas in the flux method, we are combining both. We are talking about the employees separated plus replaced. So we're talking about the entire 30 here. It's pretty clear. So basically, what we are saying in flux that we are including the replacements plus the separations. And as I said, guys, this is always also related to the efficiency targets the companies are having. As I said, the example, remember when I started the discussion today morning, just talking about companies giving 10% efficiency target. What does this mean? Either if I'm having a team of 10 people, either I'm supposed to do the same work with the help of 9 people the next year, or I add on more productivity, add on more work on my plate of the team. Thanks. Thanks, Viti. So let's kind of attack this case scenario, guys. So we have a case scenario in front of us, and we can see some questions on the basis. So employee attrition in an organization had been significantly increased. It resulted in a lot of issues here, which are kind of mentioned in front of us. Give me a quick second. Yeah, so we are looking at a lot of issues due to the attrition, recruitment cost, training cost, lakhs that were incurred. 1 lakh potential productive hours were lost due to delayed recruitment. Because every department comes under pressure. We're talking about the HR comes under the pressure, right? They have their recruitment targets. 20% of the output turned out defective during training period with a rectification cost of 50 per unit. Selling price here is 360 and the contribution or the profit volume ratio is 20%. Then we are also covering, in this case, training period for new appointments was 50,000 hours, during which their productivity was 60% of experienced workers. That means loss on the productivity as well. Settlement cost of workers leaving as a severance pay. Now, what is a severance pay, guys? Because the labor laws and the employee contracts, when we have to ask, unfortunately, someone to leave the organization, let's say, or some as part of the restructuring that may happen, and you may have to pay a severance pay as well. So this is all the information given to us, guys. I request you guys take a snapshot of this particular slide so that you guys have this information handy and then you can attack questions based on the information this given to us here. So let's look at few questions here. Give me a quick second. So we have the first question coming up. Due to the employee turnover, what was the loss of contribution? Due to the employee turnover, what was the loss of contribution? We have four options with us. So let's go back. We have to calculate what is the loss of contribution here. Any guesses, guys, what all we need to consider in this case? What all we need to consider in this case? We're talking about the loss of contribution here. What is my total contribution, guys? What is my total contribution here? So based on the information, we are looking at a contribution or the PV ratio is 20%. So we are saying contribution here is 360 into 20%, that is 72. And the requirement of the question is what is the loss of contribution? That means we need to understand what are the units we have lost here, or the units we have lost here. I think there are two things we are looking at. There is a loss of output because of the delayed recruitment. Not only that, there has been a less productive time given by the new joinees. So you have to consider both the factors into account. So it is a selling price. Yeah. So we've calculated that based on the selling price. But now we have to consider how many units we have lost here. So we are looking at a 1 lakh potential productive hours were lost. So what happens here, guys? Time taken by experienced folks given to us is 10 hours per unit. So that means if I'm looking at output by them, can I say we are looking at uh, a loss of 10,000 units here? Do you guys agree with me on this? Because we are saying that, okay, 1 lakh potential productive hours were lost. So 1 lakh divided by 10. If these hours were not lost and they were being utilized by the experienced folks, you would have produced 10,000 units here. That's one piece. Apart from this, they also said that there is a training period, initial phase where they are working, they have joined recently 50,000 hours, during which their productivity was 60% of the experienced workers. Now, this is interesting. A normal experienced person would work 50,000 hours to produce 5,000 units. But during training, the efficiency went down. They could only work around 60% efficiency level, which means they could only produce 3,000 units. So due to efficiency loss, we are talking about loss of 2,000 units here. 5,000 minus 3,000. So total loss of units is 12,000 here. Guys, everyone with me on this? Is everyone clear on this calculation part? Understanding and analysis of the facts given in the case scenario is very important. What all information is given to us, what all do we need to calculate the call of the question, because there will be multiple questions. Who knows, this working could be useful for other questions as well. I think many times students go wrong here, or probably take more time, or make an error is they do not understand the case scenario. What are the facts? What are the numbers? What is the information given to us? It's always important to spend 2 minutes, understand the case study so that you have the all information with you handy and you can attack all the parts of the questions accordingly. So we have units with us. We have contribution per unit also. So what is we are looking at from a loss of contribution perspective, guys? 12,000 into 72. Yes. Everyone with me on this? So what is that amount? What is that amount we are leading to? 8,64,000, I guess, right? Can I get a quick confirmation from everyone? The first question is clear. Any doubts on the first one? Okay. Next, we are asking what is the repairing cost? Yes, Risha. Sweetie, absolutely correct. People confirming the calculation part. So the second question here is, let's move on to the second one. What is the repairing cost incurred with respect to the defective units, guys? So repairing cost incurred with respect to the defective units. So again, we can screen down the information, what exactly we need for the repairing cost here. Tell me, guys, rectification cost is given to us, right? So we are saying in this case, repairing cost is given to us as 50 per unit. And we are saying 20% of the output turned out defective during training period with rectification cost of 50 per unit. Who will tell me the answer here? That means how we are approaching this. For the training period, what was my output? We are saying 20% of output turnout during effective training period. As I said, while answering the first question, we already have something handy. Amazing. Sweetie already giving me answer as 30,000. So probably what she has done is she already knows that, okay, we have 3,000 units during the training period as we computed at the bottom, at the first question at the top of the page. But out of this 3,000, 20% units were defective. So probably 600 units were defective. And we are looking at 50 per unit cost here to rectify the same. That gives us 30,000 here. And that means answer to the second question is absolutely option number A here. Everyone with me on this, guys, till this point? Everyone with me on this? Hmm. Okay. So let's move to next question here, guys. When I move to the next screen, I can see two questions and my eyes lit up when I see these two questions. When I say, what is the lost profit due to labor turnover? And look at the last question. How many units were lost on account of labor turnover, during, including the training period? Didn't I say that? So we have already calculated that part, I guess, right? That number should be handy with you. We already lost we calculated the units lost. So we probably know that, okay, 12,000 is something we have already done. But let's focus on question number 3. What is the lost profit due to labor turnover? So let's go on to the numbers given to us. How do we calculate the lost profit here? From all the information given to us, what are the aspects we need to consider for lost profit? I think some information is given to us as a handy as part of the case study, but some information we have also calculated, guys. So we know the recruitment cost can result into reduction of profits. Training cost can result into reduction of cost, reduction of profits. Even the severance pay can result in the reduction of profits. What do you think, guys? Am I correct or am I correct? These three elements would result into this, yes or no? As a quick checkpoint. So we are looking at recruitment cost, training cost, and the severance pay, or you can say settlement cost. If my point here is Apart from these three, apart from these three, is there anything we have already calculated that could also result in loss of profit? So we are saying 3,12,680. We are saying 2,26,360 here. And we are saying a severance pay of 3,66,960. This is the three numbers which are additional costs which result in decline in profits. But apart from that, we already calculated loss of contribution methods. Remember the loss of contribution we calculated 8,64,000. We also calculate cost of repairing. I think 30,000 someone told me. Don't you think this would also contribute to the loss of profits? Yes or no? When we're calculating the loss of profits for the labor turnover ratios, we are calculating every aspect of it. So what's the answer here? If all of these are the cost, what would be my answer, guys? If someone can quickly add these up for me. Are we looking at 18 lakhs? Thanks, Sayanto. I think everyone is confirming that. So we are looking at 18 lakhs. Yes, there was an option. We are looking at option number B then. Thanks, Viti. So we're getting some answers on the query panel. So basically, we are talking about including all those issues due to the employee turnover that resulted in the lost profit, guys. We are also considering fourth question, which we have already calculated in terms of the number of units lost, that was 12,000, guys. I'm just hoping that this exposure to the case study helps you to tackle the questions. You can say that, okay, these questions are composite way of handling the questions with the mindset of MCQs on one hand and computational and analytical mindset on other hand. So this helps you to kind of gel both the skill sets and attempt these. So that's why it's very important to understand the case scenario at the very outset. I hope everyone is with me on this one. Okay, so any issues, guys, on this case study? We are doing good. Is everyone ready for a quick last question here? Last question for the day then. One more question quickly and then we are done for the day. Okay, let's have a quick look at one more question. We are looking at a skilled worker in PK Limited is paid a guaranteed wage rate of 15 per hour in a 48-hour week. Standard time to produce a unit is 18 minutes. During a week, a skilled worker, Mr. A, has produced 200 units of the product. The company has taken a drive for cost reduction and wants to reduce its labor cost. So what we are required to calculate is to calculate the wages of Mr. A under time rate, piece rate, which we talked about, right, based on the output, and of course the Halsey and the Robin premium plans. So that's the requirement here, guys. It looks to be a pretty straightforward one, but we need to be careful in terms of how do we approach this. Okay, so in this particular case, guys, how do we calculate? How do we calculate the piece rate, guys? What do you think? Piece rate for Mr. A. We are talking about number of units produced, 200. Number of units produced, 200 here. We are talking about the time rate as well, which is 15 per hour. So if we have to understand what will be the wages under the time rate and piece rate, we can just simply use the information given to us. In terms of the time rate, we're talking about a 48-hour week. So we can simply do 15 into 48. Am I correct, guys? That would give you a 720. That is pretty much straightforward, right? What about the piece rate with a guaranteed weekly wage? How do we approach that one? How do we approach that one? Any inputs from anyone? I think if you see this carefully, we are looking at that the standard time to produce a unit is 18 minutes. 18 minutes. And if that is the case, how do we calculate per unit rate here? Will tell me the per unit rate. Standard time to produce a unit is 18 minutes, and you are talking about a 15 rupees per hour. So we are talking about 15 rupees for 60 minutes, and standard time to produce a unit is 18 minutes, guys. So someone can think of, okay, that means in a 60 minutes, if you divide that by 18, so we are getting 3.33 units per hour, and that means per unit, it would be 15 divided by 3.33. That means we're getting a 4.5 per unit, guys. 4.5 per unit. The rate we are deriving here is 4.5 per unit because 15 per hour is given to us. That means for 16 minutes, I'm getting 15 rupees. And we are looking at 18 minutes to produce one unit, 3.33 units in 1 hour. We are calculating that the piece rate as 4.5. Or you could calculate simply that, okay, 15 divided by 60 into 18. We'll do that. So that means if I'm saying that my number of units produced here is 200. So that means we are simply saying 200 into 4.5. My wages seems to be 900 if I follow the piece rate. Quickly checking with everyone, guys. The first two is clear. Sweetie, yes, it was 4.5. First two are clear to everyone, I hope. Any doubts from anyone, guys? Okay, then we move on to the ones we know, right? We learned today, Halsey premium and Rowan premium. So what is happening in the Halsey premium method? So what are we doing in the Halsey premium? So we are talking about a 48-hour week. Oh, I think we needed to calculate something for the third and fourth piece. We needed to know how much is the time saved here. We are talking about a 48-hour per week. We are talking about a 200 units. So that means 200 units into 18 minutes is ideally 3600 minutes, which means 60 hours. That means I should have taken 60 hours, but I took only 48 hours. That means what is my time saved? So time saved is 60 minus 48, 12 hours. So under the Halsey premium method, we are looking at 48 into 15 plus 50% of 12, right? So that means 50% of 12 into your 50. So we are looking at a 720 plus 900, I believe. Sorry, 90, right? Not 900. 720 plus 90 here, which would be a 810. Anyone, guys? Tamanna, Sweetie, Unikrishnan, any doubt so far in this one? And accordingly, you guys can quickly calculate the Rowan premium plan as well. 48 into 15 remains same. And we can take the ratio here of time saved upon the time allowed. So we are saying a premium here is paid as a 144. So 144 plus 720 giving us 864 here, guys. So we just implemented what exactly we learned today, did some practice. I hope everyone is doing good. And I would definitely like to thank you all for being participative. But before we end, I'd like to check once more if there are any more questions, guys. Please let me know. Any questions from anyone? It's always good when students are keeping on active in the sessions. Some of you are always replying, participating in the answers, in the workings. And it always helps, guys. You clarify your doubts because what happens in the next concept can be linked to the previous one. So if you have a doubt, even if it is the smallest of the doubt, many people feel, many students think that, okay, why should I ask this? You know, uh, this could be a very small question. What will others think? Don't worry, guys. Whatever it is, you should clarify because if you allow a smaller doubt to be unresolved, that can result in a bigger problem because that can be an input to the subsequent concepts we'll be learning in the next sessions, guys. Okay, Tamana says no doubt. Okay, Sweetie says, please show the. Sweetie's talking about the material cost. Sweetie, that is something was based on the RTP. Remember, I announced that you guys can go to the RTP section, and you will see that, right? If you're talking about the case study of the material section, you can go to the RTP on the Board of Studies portal, and you will get the solution over there as well. I hope that's fine. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining in, and best of luck for continuous hard work here, and make sure that we resort to those three tactics to succeed. Those three simple steps: practice, practice, and practice. Keep on doing the good work, guys. We'll see you soon in the next sessions next week. Take care. Have a good day. Cheers, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.